I'm okay.
My name is Raymond Bola Brown. Hi, my name is Fred Amata, and you are on to Souq News. If you are watching this channel for the first time, make sure you continue to watch it because this is Souq News.
Shout out to Souq News. Actually, I don't know. I really enjoyed the little moment I spent with you, and I think with more of this.
Souq News. Here's the Souq News who had the courage to transcend a locked off camera and actually have a conversation with a human being. It's a pleasure, Souq News. Thank you very much.
Good morning and welcome to Early Exchange with Blessing Aiche, Femi Ayodele, Sam Oruoje, and Idahosa Osamans.
The deficit budget, we're still going to borrow as much as up to 7-9 trillion.
We have a 24-hour rescue team always on standby.
As Nigerians, we must realize that government does not thrive based on what one man is doing at the seat of power.
If I had my way, I would say let's go back and bring Nigerian broadcasting.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
Yes, it's the dawn of a new day, a new week, another opportunity for us to look at issues related to business, finance, global issue, and the economy. This is Early Exchange, and I am Femi Ayodele. As you know, the Early Exchange is all about shaping policy and advancing development. With our conversation today, we're set to give you the best of programming. We'll be looking at the attack on the Red Sea and the disruption it has brought to global chain. We'll also look at the exit of, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger from ECOWAS. What will be the impact of these on the African continent? Don't forget, this is your program. This implies that you can be part of this conversation by going on our social media platform, on our YouTube page, using the hashtag Early Exchange. Like I always say, let your voice be heard. We are prepared to give you the best of programming, and as you spend the next 2 hours with us, we're going to make your day productive. Blessing is also here to add value to your day. How are you today, Blessing?
I'm very well. Good morning. It's a new week.
Yeah, it went well. My weekend was cool. You know, there are instances where you just feel the weekend should be extended.
Yes, of course. I agree with you.
Yeah, but that's where maturity comes in. You just
really?
feel like, responsibility
you made me feel at first that we were going to have a vote and you just dashed the hope. All right, good morning. Thank you for joining us on Early Exchange. It's our pleasure as always to host you to the start of a beautiful day. We do hope that you enjoy every time you spend with us here today. Femi already has ruled out to you what we'll be looking at today. The world needs peace. The world needs to come to a round table and find solutions to the pockets of troubles in different parts of the world, because in one way or the other it concerns us. Now, if the pulling out of Mali, Niger and Burkina Faso from ECOWAS does not concern you, perhaps the issue on the Red Sea should concern you. What about those shipments of yours? You want them to get to you, right? So stay with us as we talk about it on Early Exchange. First, let's get over to the news studio where Adiswa Eremusela is waiting to get you updated on current happenings.
I'm okay.
My name is Raymond Bola Brown. Hi, my name is Fred Amata, and you are on to Souq News. If you are watching this channel for the first time, make sure you continue to watch it, because this is Souq News.
Shout out to Souq News. Actually, I don't know. I really enjoyed the little moment I spent with you, and I think with more of this.
Souq News. Here's the Souq News, who had the courage to transcend a locked off camera and actually have a conversation with a human being. It's a pleasure, Souq News. Thank you very much.
I'm okay.
My name is Raymond Bola Brown. Hi, my name is Fred Amata, and you are on to Souq News. If you are watching this channel for the first time, make sure you continue to watch it, because this is Souq News.
Shout out to Souq News. Actually, I don't know. I really enjoyed the little moment I spent with you, and I think with more of this.
Souq News. Here's the Souq News, who had the courage to transcend a locked off camera and actually have a conversation with a human being. It's a pleasure, Souq News. Thank you very much.
I'm okay.
My name is Raymond Bola Brown. Hi, my name is Fred Amata, and you are on to Souq News. If you are watching this channel for the first time, make sure you continue to watch it, because this is Souq News.
Shout out to Souq News. Actually, I don't know. I really enjoyed the little moment I spent with you, and I think with more of this.
Souq News. Here's the Souq News, who had the courage to transcend a locked off camera and actually have a conversation with a human being. It's a pleasure, Souq News. Thank you very much.
I'm okay.
My name is Raymond Bola Brown. Hi, my name is Fred Amata, and you are on to Souq News. If you are watching this channel for the first time, make sure you continue to watch it, because this is Souq News.
Shout out to Souq News. Actually, I don't know. I really enjoyed the little moment I spent with you, and I think with more of this.
Souq News. Here's the Souq News, who had the courage to transcend a locked off camera and actually have a conversation with a human being. It's a pleasure, Souq News. Thank you very much.
On Souq News, I'm Adesoa Irumoseli. The Development Bank of Nigeria has stressed the importance for micro, small and medium enterprises to embrace digital transformation, acknowledging the evolving global business landscape and the crucial role of adopting new digital technologies for industry adaptation. Despite the challenges associated with digital transformation, the bank noted that businesses implementing technological innovations experience substantial gains in operational efficiency. Speaking at the 4th annual lecture series of the bank themed A Digital Nigeria, leveraging technology to improve ease of doing business for MSMEs, the chairman of the bank, Shehu Yaya, affirms the bank's commitment to actively support MSMEs in adopting digital technologies through financing initiative and capacity building programs aiming to unlock Nigeria's entrepreneurial potential and drive sustainable economic growth. Away from that, ECOWAS Commission has responded to media reports of Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger Republic withdrawing from the regional bloc, clarifying that the Commission has not received any formal notification about their intention to quit. The body emphasized its commitment to working with the three nations for the restoration of constitutional order. In a communique released yesterday, the Commission stressed the importance of Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali within the community, expressing the authority of heads of states and governments' dedication to finding a negotiated solution to the political impasse. The Commission stated that it is closely monitoring the situation and will provide further updates as it evolves. The leaders of these countries are currently facing suspensions due to coup d'etat. Away from that, Holcim, one of America's largest cement makers, is set to spin off 100% of its North American operations in a New York flotation, aiming to achieve a valuation of approximately $30 billion. The move, which is the most substantial shift since the company's acquisition of Lafarge in 2015, will see Miljan Gutovic, the current head of Europe at Holcim, taking over as CEO from Jan Junge starting May 1. The divestment is anticipated to be completed in the first half of 2025. The Janish expressed confidence in gaining shareholder support for the flotation. The goals include increasing annual sales from $11 billion to over $20 billion and generating an operating profit exceeding $5 billion by 2030. According to reports, Holcim's global operations in Europe, Latin America, Africa, and Asia will continue to be listed on the Swiss SMI Index. Focusing on building solutions such as roofing products, Holcim, the largest cement maker in North America with 16,000 employees across 850 sites, aims to strengthen its position in the market amid competition with industry players like Caltri, RPM, Eagle Material, and Summit Material. And in the Middle East, Dubai's Roads and Transport Authority has committed an investment of over $95 million to upgrade its existing non-card-based ticketing system to an account-based ticketing system. According to Dubai Media Office, this initiative is a key element of RTA's Digital Strategy Roadmap 2023 to 2030, aiming to position the authority as a global leader in digital transformation, as well as align it with the Cashless Dubai initiative. The system boasts features like trip planning, smart device payment, and facial recognition, improving user experience. With heightened electronic security and linked accounts, it prioritizes data privacy and flexibility in refining operational process. The RTA's central wallet technology facilitates better data analysis, supporting research, expansion strategies, and innovation services design. Notably, the non-card introduced in 2009 has evolved to cover various services, aligning with RTA's comprehensive digital strategy. A court in Hong Kong has ordered the liquidation of China Evergrande Group, the world's most indebted developer with over $300 billion in total liabilities. Justice Linda Chan made the decision due to Evergrande's failure to present a concrete restructuring plan over 2 years after defaulting on a bond repayment. The move, likely to send ripples through China's financial market, marks a critical juncture as policymakers strive to contain the deepening crisis. The liquidation, affecting a company with $240 billion in assets, is anticipated to complicate the already fragile Chinese capital and property markets, impacting Evergrande's daily operations. Evergrande's shares, down as much as 20%, were halted in China, and the decision set the stage for the prolonged and complicated process, raising concerns about how offshore bondholders will be treated. And with that, we call it a wrap on the news update. I'm Adesoa Iremoseli. Many thanks for watching.
All right, thank you, Adesua, for doing what you know best, which is to take us around the world with news update. And now we want to look at the rebel attack, the attack being launched by a rebel group in Yemen, in the Red Sea, which as a result of stopping the offensive being launched by Israel against Gaza. But this has also caused some disruptions when it comes to global supply chains. And we want to look at the impact of this. What has this portend for Africa, for Asia, because the waters are connecting Asia and Europe? This is what we're going to look at after this short break. Stay with us.
My name is Dr. Ajili Tobi.
My name is Etemere Glover.
Naomi, well done, and shout out to Souq News.
Shout out to Souq News. I want to encourage everyone to keep watching Souq News.
Shout out to Souq News, and yes, tune into them.
Keep watching Souq News. They are one in town.
Hey, we're watching Souq News. Keep watching Souq News. Keep watching Souq News. Catch them on YouTube and all social media channels.
Hey, my name is Frank Edowo, and I'm imploring you. No, forget that. I am forcing you, coercing you to always stay tuned to Souq News for your news requirements.
Good morning and welcome to Early Exchange with Blessing Aiche, Femi Ayodele, Sam Oruoje, and Idahosa Osamans.
The deficit budget, we're still going to borrow as much as up to 7 trillion.
We have a 24-hour rescue team always on standby.
As Nigerians, we must realize that government does not thrive based on what one man is doing at the seat of power.
If I had my way, I would say let's go back and bring Nigerian broadcasting.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
Glad to know you're still there with us. And now let's start the conversation. We're looking at the attack and the impact on the global supply chain, the destruction it has brought into it. And to shed more light on this, we're being joined by our in-house analyst. We have Dr. Idahosa Osamans. Glad to know you're here with us. It's been a while.
Quite some time. Good morning.
Blessing, good morning. So you're welcome back.
Oh, my pleasure to be here again with you at the Early Exchange.
Let me confess, we missed you on the show anyway.
Oh my God.
It was getting a bit cold, but we're glad the heat is back.
Oh, right. It's okay.
All right. So let's look at today's conversation. We are looking at, the attack being launched by the rebel group in Yemen, in the Red Sea. You are aware of why this group is launching this kind of attack. But let's set a background for our viewers to understand what is playing out. Give us a background to the reason fueling this kind of conflict, the parties involved, and then the vested interest as well.
Yeah, let's look at the background from 2000, a rebel group from the northern part of Yemen who were struggling to have representation and voice in the government of the Yemenis government, were suppressed by the Yemen government in power at that time. And their leader, Houthi, was killed by that government. And then, of course, this generated a whole lot of resistance from his followers and supporters who had put themselves together into a group to fight against the Yemeni government. And then, of course, the Middle Eastern power, led by Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, all put their energy together to see how to suppress this issue. And that was in 2005. And succeeded in ameliorating those kind of crises. But you know, when you're fighting asymmetrical wars, where you don't have human beings face to face, this war is difficult to fight. So these people have shifted away from where gunboats are, and they're operating outside of the shore. So these men have found themselves in the heart of the Red Sea, and now becoming a terror to the globe. And don't also forget that the international power play that's ongoing, and Iran has also been very critical in that interplay of terrorist groups in the Middle East. Here, you see these people, they call themselves true representative of Allah. So here, getting some support from Iran, like every other terrorist group within that space, and then unleashing this terror we are seeing on the Red Sea, which of course will have a very huge impact on the global supply chain management.
Okay, the Houthis consider Israel as an enemy, and following the Israel-Gaza war, they've been attacking, or they claim that they would attack any ship that is going to Israel or Israeli operated. But from what has been happening over time, they've been attacking even those not connected to Israel. So what has been the reason for that?
Now you should understand, the friend of my enemy is my enemy. And the friend of my friend is my friend. So this is psychology in international diplomacy. Now the target is actually not just Israel alone, it's also America, who is a strong ally of Israel and a strong ally of Saudi Arabia. So it's not just Israel in picture. So because all the politics around Israel is even because they're getting a backing of the United States. So when you're attacking Israel, you're actually attacking the United States. So when you're attacking Saudi Arabia, you're attacking United States of America. And that's why you find that American is pretty interested in what's happening here. And this is the real reason why this conversation with China is ongoing. Because once you fall out from America, you fall into the other side. Because like I've said here sincerely, the attempt to build a multipolar world has failed. And so we are going back to the bipolar arrangement, where you have one axis here and this other axis here. So people are aligning with America, another aligning with now China, because Russia is being ostracized. So the major force here is Russia, China, and who is not with America certainly will be with China. So the two forces are the one at play.
All right, let's expand this conversation further by looking at the rules of some of these countries. You have US, you have Russia, you have Iran, and you also have the group itself. But let's start with Iran. What do you think is the vested interest here? Because it's of public knowledge that this group is being sponsored by Iran, and then when it comes to the issue of weapons and ammunition, they are supplying the rebel group. What do you think is the interest here, the vested interest? Let's look at Iran before we go to other countries.
Yeah, but I think for Iran, if you have listened to Netanyahu speaks about the axis of evil, which of course is headquartered in Iran, is the fact that the Iranian government is also not happy with the injustices that's playing out in the middle of the East. Like they say, injustice anywhere become a threat to justice everywhere. So when you have a system, a global system, that is not favoring everybody at the same pace, where you're seeing the wanton exploitation by one forces over the other, and you are seeing the inequities, inequalities in terms of wealth, and some people are taking the resources from here and they are becoming richer and richer. Why poverty is, so this attempt to balance world power is what is at the center of terrorism. Because the psychology of the terrorists is the fact that you have taken everything that belongs to us and you have made us poor, and therefore we will use everything we have to ensure we grind you. So the psychology of terrorism is what is playing out. And unfortunately, Iran has been an advocate for renegade in the recent time.
All right, so let's look at the implication of this on global trade. Now, the Suez Canal is where about 15% of global seaborne trade passes. And this has been under attack for a while now. What implication will that have on global trade?
Yeah, huge implications, because if the ships are not coming, of course, supplies are not moving. And if supplies are not moving, of course, you're going to see gluts. Those who are producing cannot sell, and those who are buying cannot receive. So you have a very dire consequences. And this, of course, is going to affect flight prices globally. And you're going to see skyrocketing prices, which of course we're already experiencing in both household items, industrial goods, because you can't move through that pass. And there, of course, people are also afraid to move so that they will not be attacked. All these things is all going to spiral the inflation rate. And then, of course, in some places, it will be the deflation rate.
Now, let's look at the role of China in all this. You're aware that China is a strategic partner to Iran because of the oil and all that. Now, U.S. is trying to make a kind of diplomatic pressure on China to prevail on Iran. They had a meeting yesterday. The nationals of both countries had a meeting to see how they can pressurize China to prevail on Iran. Do you see this being a major development to this kind of this kind of crisis?
Well, I don't see the U.S. approach to resolving this issue making any significant impact, because you see, in the time past, in international politics, you see, American is the international policeman of the whole world, because they have all the weapons with them, they have all the power, they have all the money, and they can tell you sit down, you sit down, they say move, you move. The world has since moved past that space, and I think the United States of America need to understand this, that the need for mutual respect for one another is much more important in today's diplomatic relationship than this war kind of approach. To say, oh, if you don't do, I sanction you, which has been the approach of American diplomatic interplay with China. You can't bust China now because, number one, China has come of age. In terms of resources, economic power they have, military power now they have. So you can't just ask them to do X against their own national interest. So this mutual respect of one nation for the other is quite important if we will ever get world peace. And this is important. America needs to respect China. And there are a whole lot of areas where this has to play out. You take, for example, China has been asking for permanent representation in the United Nations because you find that Taiwan has been representing China. A little tiny island, which is supposed to be. And this is why you see China is also threatening to annex Taiwan, which doesn't make a sense. So we must get to that point where we have to pursue peace with everybody who is involved. Because we see that China is going to value its trade with Iran much more than any diplomatic row with the United States of America. So if you're not buying from us, we must look for market elsewhere. And that's what Chinese government has been doing in recent time. So America must recognize the fact that China has come of age, that they are not just pushover anymore. They must respect China and respect even other smaller countries in the world. And the president of America can't sit down in Washington, D.C., White House, and be ordering people around across the globe. He would need to leave White House to go meet some people and have this conversation. And I think Donald Trump succeeded in doing this during his time, where he had to even travel to North Korea to have a conversation. You see, this mutual respect is what is going to guarantee global peace at the end of the day.
Talking about guarantee global peace, the way it is right now, with even the US and UK responding to the attacks on the Red Sea by bombing, also fighting the Houthis, do you think there is a chance for peaceful negotiation, or has it gone beyond that?
That's what I'm saying. Today, diplomacy cannot rely absolutely on the power of the gun. No. It will have to rely on the power of relationship building. Because the more you fight, the more you create trouble. Because don't forget, we just talked about the death of about 25 soldiers of the Americans in Jordan border with Syria. And that's huge. For Americans to lose
25 soldiers there. Because whatever you are doing with Iran, don't forget that even the Syrian government is also opposed to this. And so you're having a whole lot of enemy within that Middle Eastern state who are also not supporting the American cause. So this is the problem. So when you say you want to bomb in the sea, the people go to another point. When you are bombing another point, you see, bombing cannot solve today's diplomatic trouble. What solves it is negotiation. People must come to the table. No matter how small you think they are economically or militarily, you need to sit down with them and let them understand that, look, these things that we're talking about, it's not about power. It's we need each other to succeed. That, for me, is the path to global peace, not war.
Now, let's look at the impact of this crisis on Africa. You're aware that the Red Sea, the activities taking place on the Red Sea, that connects Asia with Europe, then Africa. Now, what will be the impact of this kind of crisis on Africa, the economy, the logistics arrangement, and then what do you expect of African countries to start looking at in order to be able to manage this kind of crisis?
You see, Africa has been the whipping boy of the continents of the entire world, and that is quite unfortunate. We're looking forward to seeing an Africa who's grown up now, at least to be able to supply maybe up to 50–40% of what we use or consume. Because for most of African countries, we are still reliant on Asia and the Western powers for whatever we need, even including our food need. And this is, of course, going to be affected if the logistics is disturbed for a while. And then the already very poor African country become extremely poorer. So the implication for Africa is huge. And that is because Africa has not been able to actually put its house in order. And this is one of the issues that we keep saying, that we need a one Africa. Nkrumah started this advocacy in the late 50s, that Africa cannot survive as small countries. Africa can only survive as a one bloc. So he amplified the United States of Africa, which of course did really not see the light of the day because of the activities of these same superpowers, and whether they are from the East or from the West. So we couldn't really come together. And then after the death of Nkrumah, we saw that Muammar Gaddafi became another champion of African unity, because we know for us to be able to actually take our place in the Committee of Nations, Africa need to play together as one. But the Western power has never allowed us to do this, because we are tied to their apron string. And this is the problem Africa need to sit down to actually resolve and see how we can deal with, the secondary contradictions within Africa. And what are these secondary contradictions? Is access to power, where, of course, the zero-sum game politics of Africa need to change, where we need to share power, where we need to share resources with the minority, so that we don't incite them to become anti-government. So this is where Africa need really to put its house in order, so that when these shocks are happening, whether in the East or in the West, we are not adversely too affected.
Okay. Now, Africa may be trying their own best to ensure that they are not too affected. And the world in itself, in response to this, is looking for an alternative route for trade. But will that be sustained? Is it going to be a safe route in the long term? How do you see this transforming global trade over time?
Well, like I've said, and I think that for me is what it is. Whether you look for a new route, what would the new route cause to become a longer route? You have to pass through the Indian waters to find a way to get into Africa, Atlantic Ocean. And then, of course, you see the cost of carrying your vessels become quite expensive. Of course, it will affect the price of whatever thing you are buying or selling in Africa. So that is what it is. So there's no how it will not affect global trade. That is why I'm emphasizing that what the pursue is peace. And how do we get peace? Peace is simple. It's democratize the United Nations and let those big people understand that if the smaller powers matters today. Because we don't know who has what anymore. Where, of course, you can say, okay, nuclear weapon is this place. People are doing stuff. And that's what Netanyahu has been pressuring, that Iran has arsenal right there inside there. And they've been tracking and using his map to look at where the things are in Iran. We don't even know what they have. And this is where the world needs to sit down and swallow those humble pie. And let's go around the table. And we're not just calling shots to other people. We should also respect their sovereignty and the right to be who they are. And even when we are going to take things from them, we should ensure that this thing for the mutual benefit of all. So what alternative do we have? Alternative will only reduce in higher prices. And that's where the world finds itself as of today.
All right, let's look at the business implication of all this. According to reports, oil price, according to reports released on Monday, oil price have jumped up by 1%. And this is expected because even the vessel in question, was laden with oil. But now let's look at the implication now for the whole world globally. And then for Africa, what should be the narrative for Africa looking inwards, knowing fully well that this might last for a while? So what should be the narrative for Africa now that the impact is affecting global logistics, is affecting oil business, and virtually every commercial activity taking place in that route? So what should be the narrative for Africa in terms of looking inwards to be able to mitigate the effect of this attack?
That's the point I made earlier on. Africa should not be reactionary to global issues. As these things are happening, they must be able to calculate what is their impact on them and then begin to negotiate for themselves. I expect that the African Union sit down now and to call an emergency meeting of heads of states to say, how do we deal with these issues? Because we will be the biggest loser. Our citizens are going to pay more if this situation persists. And see how they can also initiate diplomatic talks with some of these rebels to see how we can stop this operation. And let's sit down around the table. And Africa can actually be a hub for negotiation. It doesn't need to be always from the West. We need to also take leadership in some of these things. So we need to see an Africa who sit down and call their Middle Eastern counterpart and say, let's deal with this issue because it's affecting us. So we're not just going to wait to see what America and China is going to do. African Union must be at the center. We want to see a delegation from AU going to Iran, not routing through China. So all these negotiation, diplomatic moves needs to be happening right now in Africa so that we don't allow the crisis to persist and then the people who are the wretched of the earth bearing the brunt.
At a time like this, do you see some businesses benefiting from it? Does it become an advantage for businesses in terms of creating substitutes?
Yeah, it will be if the technologies are there to create substitutes. There are few substitutes that you can create at the moment, which is, of course, a very big issue because refining power in Africa is low for petrol and diesel, which, of course, we still buy greatly from the West and from Asia. So these are issues. So where you have an alternative, great, you can take advantage of it. Gas still comes more from Russia and all these places to Africa. Now, Nigeria is trying to build the pipeline connecting Morocco to Spain. Now, if this project has been done earlier than now, of course, Nigeria should be smiling to the bank with a lot of opportunity if this thing is not coming from the West. So these are some of the things where we really need to be strategic in terms of thinking and looking at the way the world is today, how we should play in terms of positioning ourselves for global trouble. And Africa needs to take a lecture on this. And I mean African leaders.
All right, we're due for a break now. When we return, we'll continue our conversation as regards this disruption taking place in the global chain. Stay with us.
Idumota Market. Eko Idumota, once a residential neighborhood, is home to Idumota Market located on Lagos Island. It is one of the oldest and arguably one of the largest markets in West Africa. Idumota is a historic neighborhood adjacent to the Lagos port that facilitated the slave trade and later, under the British indirect rule, it surrounded to exports that fueled the colonial enterprise. Idumota was also the location of an armed forces remembrance cenotaph called Soja Idumota, built as a monument to Nigerian soldiers who served with the West African Frontier Force. An Eyo Masquerade statue and a clock tower are also some monuments at Idumota. Idumota Market is so popular that large sales are recorded as early as 7 a.m. The market is made up of hundreds of locked-up shops occupying several multi-story buildings, with some measuring about 5 or more floors. In 2010, the Lagos State government demolished some illegal structures in order to improve vehicular and human movement in and around the markets. During weekdays, the neighborhood of Idumota is densely populated by shoppers, traders, and bus passengers. From the Carter Bridge ascending into Lagos Island, passengers can see the neighborhood before disembarking at their final destination. Idumota Market accommodates the substantial inflow of imported goods. The bulk of import from abroad are routed first through Idumota and then on to other markets through Nigeria and other West and Central African countries. The energy of private Idumota traders and wholesalers facilitate this activity, where millions of US dollars worth of wholesale is exchanged daily. Idumota Market, Souq Enlightenment. Good morning and welcome to Early Exchange with Blessing Aiche, Femi Ayodele, Sam Oruoje, and Idahosa Osamas.
The deficit budget, we're still going to borrow as much as up to 7-9 trillion.
We have a 24-hour rescue team always on standby.
As Nigerians, we must realize that government does not thrive based on what one man is doing at the seat of power.
If I had my way, I would say let's go back and bring Nigerian broadcasting.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
Many thanks for staying with us on Early Exchange. We're still looking at the attack on the Red Sea, attack of ships at the Red Sea, going through the Red Sea. What's the implication on global trade? And Idahosa Osamanze has been providing us with great thoughts on that. Now let's look at the implication of the situation on insurance companies. Many of the ships that have been affected would need to be covered by the insurance companies, and then those who are still in business needing such cover. So what does it mean for insurance companies?
It's huge, certainly on insurance, because when you see these kind of losses happening, of course, claims will be very high, and these affect basically insurance company. And we just do hope that it does not get beyond this level. Now, if it gets beyond this level, you will need to have states to intervene. Otherwise, the insurance companies completely will be wiped out. Because if you have insurance company and they have so much in this particular trip and then it's attacked, then depending on the companies and how many companies will, of course, have to pay claim to either the goods owner or those who are the ship owners. So this is substantial. And this, of course, take a toll on them. So all the gains that you would have made several months back, then, of course, this particular claim period wipe them out. So it's going to be some losses. But I don't think it's something that's too substantial right now. At the moment, maybe 2 or 3 vessels attacked will not be sufficient to wipe out the insurance company. And I think for the peace period that they have enjoyed in the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, when this was not happening, they should be able to still stand if they well capitalized. depending on which country of origin that these insurance companies may be located.
I'm wondering, in all this, what's the role of Russia? You know, what influence will Russia have or has on, you know, this kind of crisis? And what could be the vested interest here as far as Russia is concerned?
Well, like I said to you, we are gradually gravitating towards power fronts in politics today that whether we like it or not, yes, people can still talk about multilateralism, but I don't see that working anymore, really, because there's no small center power anywhere. So it's either you are here or there. So if you're not with the US, you must be with Russia, China. So that's where we are. So this is where the world has found itself again. And we are at a throw of a very difficult challenge. But I think nature has some of all these crises. And that's why you are seeing a whole lot of gluts in China also happening. And then, of course, they're also concerned about trade. Russia itself is having to cope with the NATO forces in its war against Ukraine. This is also affecting its economy real dearly. So here, yes, it may not be anything good for anybody. This is not good for anybody. And I don't think there's such vested interest real here. But what also we must have to look at is what level of authority do these nationals have over these terrorists? Well, what else? You see, it's one thing for you to be able to say, okay, I supply you a weapon, and then we give you oil in return, or we give you something else that means that's where the relationship ends. But they cannot command you to say, go on war or stop war. Because the goals or the objective of this crisis may not be the same to either Russia or to Iran or those concerned from Yemen. So Yemen, this is the real issue here. So you have a world here where everybody has an interest to protect. And now, in those days, they call it in international relations, mutual assured destruction. That's the situation where we find ourselves, because if this thing persists, it's not just going to affect only China or American, it's also affecting Russia, because the grain cannot enter into Africa also. So I think they should also be very concerned about what is happening at the Red Sea, because their vessels won't pass also. So this is where they to themselves are also worried, and they must also really be talking about it. But it's unfortunate that at the 12-hour meeting with between the U.S. officials and the Chinese officials, really for me, when you are serious about diplomatic issues, head of state should meet.
Well, this time around, the conclusion from that meeting is there's going to be a phone conversation between U.S. President and that of China. Do you think that will make any impact?
Well, phone conversation, I don't know what impact that can make. The phone conversation is different from table talk, where people sit down around table and I can be looking at your eyes and know what you are feeling and what you are thinking in your mind. So this is also very important. And this is the problem the world has found itself in recent time, when we're having only old men govern the global space. And this is quite not good. So because they can't travel, they can't move, the mobility is rigid. And this is why this is all having this space. If we'll have a younger president in America, I could take a flight the next day and say, okay, let me meet this guy up in China and say, look, what's the real issues? Let's talk about it. So take pride aside and then face the diplomatic issues, and then you can get real solution. Making telephone call will not stop the issue, really, for me. I think it should be much more than a telephone call. Since America is the one who is actually pursuing peace at the moment, and I think they should do it with every of the strength and energy they have to actually drive this process. Because it's not China. If China is the one that's actually the one that is trying to drive this process of negotiation, then of course Pink should be in America to see the American president and sit down with him one-on-one and say, let's resolve these issues. But I think, you see, ego is a big problem here. And China is becoming egocentric, and of course, America has always been there on a high ego, and then they feel that they rule or own the entire world. But people are saying, no, that's not correct. So this is where, for me, that conversation needs to be elevated. It needs people to sit down, shake hands, and agree on something that is concrete, that both parties can take to the Congresses, and then they resolve the issues and they deal with it.
Do you see any connection with politics here? You know, the American election is near, is coming soon. And do you think how Joe Biden handles this crisis will have an influence on his rating?
Well, of course, there's no how. If it's going to have economic implications, definitely it will also have political implications. You see, if you manage your relationship with other people very well, it also affects how your locals rate you in terms of your efficiency. And this is what it is. And people would now begin to remember themselves and say, oh, if it was the day of Donald Trump, this cannot happen. These are where Biden need to actually leverage his contact and connection with China to solve this problem. And if he's unable to use it, and it's a very low ebb here, it will continue to affect the way he's seen politically, whether it's a weakling or somebody who is inefficient when it comes to diplomatic relationships. So he needs to prove a point, and prove that point to the American voters, definitely. So if it's affecting the economy, it will sure affect politics, and that's for sure. So, but it's not that people who are on the right seats are doing it because American election is close. No. The real truth of the matter is that they have been there. It's not today, it's not yesterday, it's not last year. They have been there even before he came. And it's just that by the way Trump has positioned America during his tenure in the 4 years was to say, American for America, we really don't care what's happening on the outside. So they were not putting eyes on what was happening in the international scene as much as it affects the American interests. So the places that Donald Trump will go to will be things that America can easily leverage on as it's affecting their trade or whatever interest that America hold in those spots. So he was not so much about being here or there, which of course is the hallmark of democratic governance. They want to see how every country in the world is doing, including looking at moral issues in countries. So Donald Trump wasn't really concerned about those issues while he was the president. But here you're seeing an American president who is interested in everything, everywhere. And then, of course, you're spreading your tentacle. And the debt burden on the American citizen is getting to the rooftop. Put at last month at about every American citizen is owing about $102,000 US in debt.
All right, so if America is able to negotiate very well with with China at this time, and the attack at the Red Sea stops, what about the Middle East? Do you see that translating to peace in the Middle East? Is it just America that is fundamental to bringing peace? Or even within the Middle East, there are issues within themselves that needs to be resolved?
Yeah, but you see, what America is trying to do with China is not really because China has the key to what is happening in the Red Sea. China doesn't have the key. Now, what America is thinking is that, look, if Iran is funding these people, and the greatest buyer of Iranian oil is China. Now, if China stops buying Iranian oil, then Iran will not have money to give to these people. Probably they will run out of fund, and then probably the war will end. So that is just a calculation. But who say Iran will not sell oil to other people? Who say India will not be ready to buy oil from Iran? Who says Russia will not be ready to buy oil from Iran? So these are the issues that, for me, that's making it really very complex. Because you're not having, as if that, you see, when you call the Chinese president will call the head of the Houthi rebels and say, okay, please stop, and they will stop. No, that possibility is remote. What is in here is, okay, help us put sanction on these people. So if you sanction them,
war.
yeah, so that's, which is of course still war, and it makes it even more severe and die. And we also have to look at the implication of that on the Chinese domestic economy that is suffering a glut at the moment because of overcapacity. They have produced so much, and so much is lying down, is not being sold. I was reading the news this morning where, of course, I think in Switzerland, were complaining that they are going to be closing down their solar panel, even in Germany also, because they are looking at American, Chinese coming to undersell their products in those regions. So the Chinese economy is also threatened. So China also is also very conscious of whatever that happens, so that at the end of the day, there will be a revolution even within China, because when people are hungry, only one thing is left. If you have nothing to live for, you can die for anything.
Let's discuss now how to de-escalate this kind of crisis. Do you see any military approach helping this? Globally, you always resort to the issue of having roundtable conversation. But here you have a rebel group, maybe you can put it like a terrorist group where terrorism is at play here. What are the risk factors here? If perhaps you want to invite this kind of group to a roundtable discussion to see a kind of extending hands of fellowship rather than using the military approach here, what would be, or what are the risk factors?
You see, it is to understand the psychology of the man you are dealing with. The man you are dealing with is just to prove a point. And what is this point? That they are significant and they are relevant. And so that's why I say to you, the only way to deal with this issue is relationship building. And is to let the man know that you are very relevant. We agree that you are significant.
How? The rebel group?
Yes, with the rebel group.
How would that turn out? That's why the risk factors here.
Yeah, but what you're saying to them is that we know that you are significant. Put your cards on the table. What are the issues here? You want some equity in your country, which is Yemen. How do we address the issue so that we can have a truly democratic Yemen, where the minority group, what is playing out globally, it's not just only in Yemen. If you even look at the issues that affect us as a country in Nigeria, you see the security challenge that we face is also related in some sort to this issue of dealing with minority groups. There's a problem where the minority feels that they are disempowered and they cannot have, what they want by peaceful means. So the only way to get it is through violent means. So if peaceful revolution become impossible, then violent revolution becomes inevitable. This is what you're saying. So a lot of people are feeling, okay, say if I'm not significant, and it's okay, let's go to votes. Your vote will not count. So if vote is not going to count in a democracy, because democratic is majoritarian ethic, number wins. So if my vote is not going to count, and therefore I have to wait till eternity to even get my right. So what do I need to do? Disrupt the system. And that's why I'm saying that the only way to deal with this issue is to be truly democratic about it. Democracy, as defined by the American legend, is the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. It's not the government of a majority over the minority. So which means at play here is power sharing arrangement. And I think Canada had demonstrated this in the form of the kind of democracy they practice, which is constitutional democracy, where powers are shared among the constituent units in the federation. So this is the options that are available, that we can put the cards on the table to say, what actually do you want? And we look at the possibility, because if we say, okay, let's go to vote, vote will not solve these issues. And so what will solve the issue is this relationship, to say, okay, we recognize your need. It's not that we are giving a thumb up to your terrorist action, but that we are understanding the underlying philosophy of your violence. Now, if we address this issue, will you drop violence? And then we start to engage with the Yemen government and see how they can accommodate this minority interest. And then you find peace in Yemen, then the Red Sea will find peace.
Well, doing this would mean that America has to come to the position of wanting to negotiate with them. And over time, they've held the position that you don't negotiate with terrorists, except they are not considering these rebels as such.
Yeah, but that's a position you have had. What I'm saying in essence is that in the era of the 20th century, these were possibilities. Where you have, power measured in terms of the arsenal that you have built, the size of your army, the size of your resources that you command. Today, world power is no longer conceptualized in terms of hardwares. There's a software dimension to it, and I think Americans should be at the forefront of understanding this reality. That power calculus has changed, and if power calculus changes, then the way we handle power also need to change. So when you're seeing that people are creating trouble, and what do? You engage them in such that you can also empower them economically so that those troubles stop, because the trouble is not good for anybody. That's the point. You remember what Yar'Adua did when the Niger Delta was boiling? It was a simple arrangement. Make peace with the militants. Some of them were sent abroad to go and do schools. Some of them were engaged and given contract and the rest of it. And what happened? Militancy died down. Because you must not be dealing with the symptoms. We must look at the root of the issues. What are the roots? The root is that these people from the northern Yemen feel that they are disenfranchised. And this is what is leading to the protest. So it's a local politics that is transmuting into an international one. And therefore, if you have to deal with it, then you have to go to the roots, to solve it at the roots, and then you can have your peace.
Okay, we do hope that this happens quickly so that the world can have some peace and then global trade can continue without any hitch. Thank you so much, Idausa Osamaze, for your submissions on the show today.
My pleasure to be here.
Let's go on a quick break and return to look at another matter. Stay tuned.
Tafawa Balewa Square, TBS. Tafawa Balewa Square was initially used as a horsing ground called Lagos Race Course. The edifice was constructed by General Yakubu Gowon in 1972 and named after Nigeria's first Prime Minister, Sir Tafawa Balewa. Tafawa Balewa Square is located at 45/57 Marse Bangboshe Street on Lagos Island, Lagos, and referred to as TBS. TBS is a 50,000-seater capacity venue and houses the Remembrance Arcade, the 26-story Independence House, which at a time was the country's tallest building. When Lagos served as the country's seat of government, the National Assembly Complex was within the TBS. Also in the square are the National Broadcasting Commission Office, the Nigerian Hydrological Services Agency Office, shopping centers, travel agencies, restaurants, car parking lots, and a bus terminal. Tafawa Balewa Square is adorned with beautiful statues of white horses and red eagles, symbols of strength and dignity. Our historic neighbors include the King's College and the Holy Cross Cathedral. Tafawa Balewa Square hosted some of the country's memorable events, such as the Independence Day in 1960, when Nigeria gained independence from Britain, the Armed Forces Remembrance Day, which is celebrated annually on January 15. The edifice is a national cultural asset. Tafawa Balewa Square, Souq Enlightenment. Good morning and welcome to Early Exchange with Blessing Aiche, Femi Ayodele, Sam Oruoje, and Idahosa Osamans.
The deficit budget, we're still going to borrow as much as up to 7-9 trillion.
We have a 24-hour rescue team always on standby.
As Nigerians, we must realize that government does not thrive based on what one man is doing at the seat of power.
If I had my way, I would say let's go back and bring Nigerian broadcasting.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
All right, having talked about the trouble at the Red Sea, let's look at Africa right now. As some countries that used to be part or that are part of the ECOWAS, I'm talking about Burkina Faso, Niger, and of course Mali, announcing that they're pulling out of the ECOWAS, even though according to the ECOWAS, they haven't received a formal notification from these countries that they're pulling away from the ECOWAS. What will be the implication on Africa as these three countries choose to pull out from the ECOWAS? What roles have the ECOWAS been playing in the affairs of these countries since the troubled times that I'm referring to, the coup that have happened in these countries? Okay, these are some of the issues that we'll discuss at this time. As we'll be joined virtually by Jide Ologun Esquire, who's also a global affairs analyst. Good morning, Jide.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
We thank you for making time to be with us on the show today. All right, first let's start with the ECOWAS as a regional body. What role does the ECOWAS play or is supposed to play in the affairs of its member countries?
Thank you very much. ECOWAS was established by the Treaty of Lagos. That should be 28th of May, 1975. And that treaty has been revised in July 1993. And as the name implies, it is the economic community of West African states. And in French, you call it CEDEAO, and Portuguese also. And it's meant to be a regional political and economic union of 15 countries that collectively has estimated population of about 420 million people. So you expect that should be a huge market, economically speaking. And the principal goal of ECOWAS is to achieve collective self-sufficiency, for member states by creating a single large trade bloc and building full economic and trading union, which will have impact on the political lives of the nations that are there. But going down the lane, from 1975 to date, the big question to ask is that how well has ECOWAS done in delivering on this? And that is one of the excuses given by the nations that are threatening to pull out now. When the coup d'etat took place, it was based on the complaint of economic marginalization and backwardness for the people, that the resources available within the nations do not reflect in the good lives that should be presented to the citizens. And right now, the ECOWAS community is trying to persuade and at the same time impose sanctions on these countries to return to democratic system of government, and in response to the sanctions, three of them have come together now to say, okay, we are pulling out completely from ECOWAS, and that is sending a future signal that if that is successfully carried out, then the fear is that other nations may start looking in the direction of reintroducing military rule and interventions that is being phased out by ideal democracy. So it appears from the outcomes of the existence of ECOWAS that much has not been delivered to the citizens of the nations that comprise ECOWAS. So, and that the one, okay. You were going to ask a question?
All right, Bryce Gideologun, good to see you again. It's been a while.
Thank you very much.
Now let's look at the underlying factors here. The military leaders of these countries decided on Sunday to withdraw their membership from the regional bloc, which is ECOWAS. What are the issues fueling this kind of unusual development?
Primarily, the impact of the sanctions on those nations. And, you know, we have issues of perception here now in public relations to talk about perception. Those who plotted a coup and took over to establish military rule over those nations are of the perception that the government hitherto, you know, was not delivering to the citizens what should be. And apart from that, the complaints from some of them is that their former colonialists, you know, kept exploiting them, throwing them into poverty while getting enriched by the resources. You need to go and find out the resources that are available in Niger Republic, for instance. Those resources should be enough to make Niger maybe the 5th richest country in the world. You see, so these are issues. The same underlying factors that we make those who plan coup to say we are kicking this government out of office: corruption, maladministration, poverty, not delivering on the expectations of leadership. And at a point, you know, ECOWAS was trying to, you know, scream and use force, but the kinetic approach may not help the situation, particularly now that you have 3 nations forming a bloc. And my argument at the time was that ECOWAS should be proactive in ensuring that we have mechanism within ECOWAS that we make leaders of the different nations develop their countries and deliver the dividends of good governance to their citizens, which now prevents military intervention, at least to a reasonable extent. But in a situation where, as some know, Africa has about 40% of the total resources in the world, and yet accommodates a huge percentage of the poor citizens of the world, then questions will be raised by some. How are these resources engaged? And that is why one of the reasons given by those that brought in the military intervention. And ECOWAS has been trying to persuade them, let's talk, you know, negotiate and things like that. But the effect of the sanction is getting tougher. So the 3 of them are saying, okay, if we are not likely to get support from this ECOWAS region, let's form our own bloc. And in public relations, particularly the 1978 Mexican statement, is the art and social science of monitoring trends and predicting their consequences. So it's about their consequences. Now, this is going to impact security in Africa, in West Africa. For instance, these countries are close borders to Nigeria, neighboring countries. Before now, under the tenure of the former President Muhammadu Buhari, Niger Republic was like a twin brother to Nigeria. In fact, the president invested so much constructing rail line to Niger Republic. He even said at the time that only God can manage the border of Nigeria and Niger. Now that border is short. They are not doing business with Nigeria. They are not even friends of Nigeria. And so not to start with, the investment of the former president in Niger Republic is locked up now. You know, how strategic that decision was is a different thing. And so, and when this bloc are now reinforcing their relevance within ECOWAS, other nations will be monitoring them. because there are agitations in some West African countries about the level of poverty, about the level of insecurity, about the level of absence of good governance. So, and that is why ECOWAS should be concerned. And of course, we know that Nigeria is the headquarters of ECOWAS. So, and that is why this matter should be handled with utmost diligence. And I understand that there was a group from ECOWAS expected to meet in Niamey, but due to logistic issues, they could not fly out of Abuja. And these are part of the issues we are talking about. So it may appear that not much seriousness is given to this issue. And when you talk about military intervention, you know the level of force that may be embraced by military engagement. So we need to prevent the democracy that is being nurtured in West Africa from being encroached upon, because that would be sending a very harsh signal to the protection of democratic tendencies. But on the other side also, the drivers of democracy should be seen to deliver on the mandate of democracy. Democracy is the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And let me say this, coming to Nigeria, for instance, and picking it from our grand norm, the Constitution. You look at Section 14, subsection 2 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended. It says clearly that the security and the welfare of the citizens shall be the primary purpose of government. So let me now ask you this big question. How many countries within West African region can claim to have secured the citizens and to have provided meaningful welfare to their citizens? And these are questions that are plaguing us.
So these political issues, how do you think is going to affect regional trade or trade within the West African region?
Definitely is impacting it negatively. We've had informal reports of hostility. Within the ECOWAS region, we have the ECOWAS passport, we have treaties that should enable us to move freely, but that is not the case. So we have not been able to synchronize the efforts of member states. Like I said earlier, there should be 15 states within the ECOWAS region, and the aim is to create collective self-sufficiency. And how do you do that? By creating a single large trade bloc and building a full economic and trading union. So how do you trade with Niger Republic, for instance? How do you trade with Burkina Faso, for instance? So these are issues. Even those that are still under democratic system of government, how fluent is the relationship? We were reading at a time the hostility of Ghana to business concerns of Nigerians there. So West Africa is yet to come together to maximize the benefits of the economic population. And I place that at about 420 million all the time. And the huge resources, the productive potentials, and these are serious issues that should concern us. Africa, and by being specific, West Africa has no business with poverty. I did a research, global one, and it will amaze you that about 40% of the whole resources in the world are domiciled in Africa. And the population of Africa is just about 1.5 billion. And you throw that into the around 8.2 billion of the world population, then you now see the huge potentials in terms of resources that Africa has. So what we lack generally is the resourcefulness to maximize our resources by creating commonwealth for common good. Though some countries in Africa are doing well. You talk about Mauritius, you talk about Botswana, you talk about Rwanda, you talk about Egypt, and some countries like that. So, and these are issues. And in the absence of good governance, in the absence of security and welfare for the citizens, crises are inevitable.
All right, now let's make reference to the treaty that led to the formation of ECOWAS in 1975. Over the years, there have been issues around the credibility of ECOWAS. In fact, there's a clip I'm going to play for you now. I'd like you to take a listen where the former head of state, Gowon, talked about these issues in 1975. I would like you to take a listen and then you will react to it.
It is also my sincere hope that our deliberations at this meeting will set us firmly on the road to the fulfillment of our commonly held aspirations for greater effective cooperation of the countries of West Africa and a more cohesive and prosperous sub-region as part of and contributing to a progressive and equally prosperous continent. This is a momentous day, marking as it does the fulfillment of many hopes, the result of persistent efforts on the part of leaders from all corners of West Africa, another major and concrete step in giving practical effects to aspirations which we all share and which in various previous meetings, conferences and groups, we have all endeavored since the beginning of the last decade to bring to fruition.
All right, the former president here, the former military head of state here, raised concerns about the collaborations between the bloc. Now, let me read to you the concerns being raised by some of these military leaders. They allege that the bloc has moved away from the ideals of its founding fathers and Pan-Africanism. I would like you to react to this. What's your take to this in respect to the concern raised by the former military head of state and the allegations by these military leaders that ECOWAS has deviated from the ideals of its founding fathers and Pan-Africanism? How do you react to that?
Basic issue there. If you go back to creation, in Genesis chapter 1, verse 28, God blessed man and he said, be fruitful, multiply, replenish the earth. And so the essence of having the government structure is to replenish, to improve, to enhance the fortunes of the people. And those are the ideals of the founding fathers. All right. And General Gowon, the former military head of state of Nigeria, mentioned it in his speech now. Prosperity, cohesion. So can we claim that that prosperity vision has been achieved in West Africa? So those are the issues. Those are the issues. Can we claim that we are really, truly together by the way we operate? Even bringing it down to the micro space, Nigeria. Nigeria has 6 geopolitical zones. Nigeria had 3 dominant tribes. How coherent, how cohesive have we come together to maximize the huge opportunities available for prosperity? Are we not being torn apart by ethnic sentiments, by religious sentiments? Are we not being plagued by all thieves, cabals who set up themselves against the nation? And these are issues. So when you talk about the ideals of founding fathers, that is why I took it back to the father of all fathers, God himself. When God created so many blessings in the Garden of Eden, it was to bless humanity. So can we claim that the resources in West Africa have been engaged by our leaders to bless the people within the region? I've done some comparative researches. For instance, let's isolate Ghana. Ghana has gold. The UK has coal. And Buckingham Palace is decorated by gold. Is any palace decorated by gold in Ghana? Nigeria has the largest deposit of proven gas in Africa. So how much do we buy gas in Nigeria here? We have oil in abundance. that we cannot refine. So these are issues. So when you talk of ideals, ideals mean what should be in place. So have we not deviated from the developmental course of life? Because the sign of life is growth, is development. So can we claim to have developed? 1975, if I roll back now, in 1975, I was in primary school. I entered secondary school in 1977. So these are issues. And look at where we are today in West Africa. So these are issues. So, and that's why I mentioned earlier that the military intervention will come under an excuse. And we are even talking about the local issues now. What about the global issues? Because some of the complaints also is that the former colonialists have been exploiting the region with the collaboration of local leaders. There are several mineral resources in West Africa. Look at Nigeria, for instance. I just mentioned the issue of oil theft. Who are these oil thieves? Why should we export our crude oil for refining in Europe, in other parts of the country, of the world? Bring part of the products home, forfeit the other products to them, and now we are crying foul that a dollar exchanges for 1,300 naira in the parallel market. So who do we blame, God or the devil? Because in Nigeria specifically, oil was discovered in commercial quantity in 1956. We became a producer in 1958. The first refinery was commissioned in 1965, built by Shell. We have 4 national refineries that came to comatose recently, to the point that we spend about 100 billion naira for the turnaround maintenance. And we are still in the red ocean of even trying to revive that vital sector of our national life. So these are issues. These are issues in West Africa. So I think we should be sustainable, in our thinking right now. Put Africa of the future on the table. That what can we achieve? I see the United Nations helped us. I think 2015 or 2016, the Sustainable Development Goals were placed on the table that will be evaluated in 2030, just about 6 years from now. So how much of it have we done? Even though I know a country like Rwanda is keeping pace with the goals. And there is also provision for partnership. So these are issues. So we appear not to have woken up at all in West Africa to the expectations of development. And that's why these 3 guys are saying, okay, let's see what we can do. But how well also they can deliver as military leaders is a different question. But when I went back to study public relations, we learned something in the classroom that concerning the style of government, let fools argue. And so it may be that their leadership style will deliver development to the people. After all, if you go to Singapore, that was translated from a little coastal region with little resources to a place that is like the best place to live and work in the world, one of the best places in the world now by Lee Kuan Yew. Lee Kuan Yew did not practice the ideal democracy way. He combined autocracy with everything, and he told the world that leave me and my people. You see, Sheikh Zayed that developed the UAE from a desert to a modern paradise also did not follow the democratic principles, as espoused in that definition. But this man said that wealth is not money, but developing the people. So how well can we claim that the people in West Africa have been developed to add value to themselves and add value to the society? So these are several issues that we have. That's why I am personally challenging ECOWAS now to go back to the drawing board. The drawing board is still there, and look out of the window and re-strategize towards a secured future. Otherwise, we may be drifting in the direction of a mortgaged future.
All right, in doing that, because the ECOWAS intends to negotiate with these countries, and one of the reasons that the three countries have given for wanting to pull out of the ECOWAS is the way the ECOWAS handled what they refer to as taking their destinies in their own hands with a coup. Is there a different approach ECOWAS could have used? And in going forward by negotiating with these countries, are there issues or are there things the ECOWAS should bring to the table to extend a hand of friendship to these countries in trying to win them back?
Absolutely. We have the kinetic, which is diplomacy. Sit down, negotiate. Conflict is inevitable. Or you get to the table, and in resolving conflicts, there are about 5 steps. I may mention few. Identify what the problem is, which is critical, because if you don't start from there, you only be handling symptoms and not the root causes. What are the problems? What are the threats? Why are you afraid that we cannot continue with this? What new thing are you bringing? How can we understand one another? How do we come to the point of agreement? And how do we prompt resolutions? And how do we keep faith with the resolutions for implementation purpose? The only thing that is constant is change. At a time, the military head of state, General Gowon, retired, that we listened to earlier, said that the problem of Nigeria was not money, but what to do with the money. But look at it today. What is the indebtedness rate of Nigeria? So we need to look ahead. So let all parties sit down. And a wise man said, you first seek to understand before you are understood. So when you come to that negotiation table, you must keep your minds open, and the most important thing is to look out of the window and look at the people. I mean, many watched how the people were rejoicing when the coup took place. That is a non-verbal, a combination of verbal and non-verbal communication. So it's about the people. The resources of the land are there for the people. And some have complained that the global stakeholders are trying to manipulate. If that is the case, who says that West Africa cannot come out and begin to develop their region and maximize their resources? So these are issues. For how long do we play slaves to those who enslaved us earlier? So those are the issues. It's all about negotiation and fulfilling promises and keeping faith with resolutions. And I hope that these new leaders we are talking about are sincere about moving their nation to greater heights. If that is the case, I mean, let's see how we can, and maybe other countries will learn from them, because there are other countries in West Africa too that practice democracy and have little to show for democracy. So in terms of development, and somebody threw a challenge to me recently that, are we even learning from the developed countries? And my answer was quite direct and simple, that if we are learning from developed countries, by now we should have been developed. You see, so these are issues. What are our priorities? Is it about the luxury of office, flamboyance, and leadership lifestyle at the expense of developing institutions that we attract wealth? For instance, in public relations, you don't talk about foreign direct investment if you don't have a stable and secure environment, because the investor is in business. He wants to be sure that his investments are secure. So it doesn't matter, you can go around the world soliciting for investment. You won't have it unless and until you secure your environment. These are issues. These are issues. I told you about Singapore. Big brands do business in Singapore because in the doctrine of wealth creation and wealth sustainability, the first thing you do is to create a wealth magnet locally that will attract foreign investment. So you build infrastructure, you build the culture of ease of doing business, you assure those who come to invest that they will reap from their investments. Look at Nigeria, for instance, now. The aviation sector, many foreign airlines have their money trapped within the economy of the nation. How will they be encouraged to come and invest, even when some investors in the country are jetting out of the country. So these are issues that should concern ECOWAS. ECOWAS should drop their garments of honor and status and get down to business. How can West Africa be repositioned? Let me say this. God has blessed West Africa excellently. I just gave us an instance. Do they have cocoa in Switzerland? You start talking about some of the best chocolates, they're from Switzerland. Okay, now we have oil and gas in abundance. We cannot even refine the oil. So the wiser ones who have developed to the secondary level of refining the crude product are the ones benefiting. You see, and that is why it should be difficult to tame the exchange rate that is embarrassing us. So let West Africa wake up. Let Africa wake up. Wake up and maximize your resources. And I stand to be corrected. The resources of West Africa account hugely for what is used to develop the developed countries. And that is why the partitioning of Africa was of interest to them. Because of are you talking of human resources? Right now, how many medical doctors are left in West Africa? They are all seeking greener pastures. And those countries are marketing seriously to mop them out of West Africa to come and drive and build their own economies. For how long do we continue with that? And let me say this, if you think you are enjoying the pleasures of office now, one day you'll be out of office. So what kind of society would you have contributed to developing? See, so these are issues. So this is a critical moment in history now. But I'm advising they should go to the negotiation table, put the main issues on the table. What are the fundamental crises that we have here now? And not just the symptoms. And you see how you learn from one another, come to an understanding, and you move on. And like I said, West Africa has no business with poverty at all. And again, it's instructive to know that these guys are from the Sahel region, and you know the import of that when you talk about all this terrorism and then you understand what I'm saying. So we really need to handle this matter with caution. And under industrial psychology, you have what we call reinforcement theory. So if this is not well handled, we may be reinforcing the reintroduction of military interventions in West Africa. And I doubt if that is the way to go now. And one of the critical solutions to that is to bring good governance and development to the people. When people have a sense of belonging and they enjoy themselves, it should be difficult for some juntas to come from somewhere and say that they want to take over.
All right, that's quite interesting. We need to go on a short break now. We'll be right back to discuss more on the issue of exit of these countries from ECOWAS. Stay with us.
Tafawa Balewa Square, TBS. Tafawa Balewa Square was initially used as a horsing ground called Lagos Race Course. The edifice was constructed by General Yakubu Gowon in 1972 and named after Nigeria's first Prime Minister, Sir Tafawa Balewa. Tafawa Balewa Square is located at 45/57 Mase Bangboshe Street on Lagos Island, Lagos, and referred to as TBS. TBS is a 50,000-seater capacity venue and houses the Remembrance Arcade, the 26-story Independence House, which at a time was the country's tallest building. When Lagos served as the country's seat of government, the National Assembly Complex was within the TBS. Also in the square are the National Broadcasting Commission Office, the Nigerian Hydrological Services Agency Office, shopping centers, travel agencies, restaurants, car parking lots, and a bus terminal. Tafawa Balewa Square is adorned with beautiful statues of white horses and red eagles, symbols of strength and dignity. Our historic neighbors include the King's College and the Holy Cross Cathedral. Tafawa Balewa Square hosted some of the country's memorable events, such as the Independence Day in 1960, when Nigeria gained independence from Britain, the Armed Forces Remembrance Day, which is celebrated annually on January 15. The edifice is a national cultural asset. Tafawa Balewa Square, Souq Enlightenment. Morning and welcome to Early Exchange with Blessing Aiche, Femi Ayodele, Sam Oruwoje, and Idahosa Osama.
The deficit budget, we're still going to borrow as much as up to 7-9 trillion.
We have a 24-hour rescue team always on standby.
As Nigerians, we must realize that government does not thrive based on what one man is doing at the seat of power.
If I had my way, I would say let's go back and bring Nigerian broadcasting.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
To know you're still there with us. This is still Early Exchange. Just to let you know that you can be part of this conversation by going on our social media platform, my YouTube page at Souq News, for you to share your view. Let your voice be heard. What's your take on the exit of these three countries from ECOWAS? You have Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. What's your take on these? What's your impression? What do you think would be the outcome of this for the African continent? And then what do you expect of the big brother of the Africa, of the West Africa, which is the ECOWAS, to do in a circumstance like this? Blessing? Let me find out from you. You know, there are a lot of people who feel, okay, the options could be a military approach. On the other hand, there are others who feel that could be too risky, looking at the fact that these three countries, they are familiar with coups, and you have military leaders already, and somehow they have alliance with Russia, who in the recent times has been providing support through the Wagner groups and some of the activities going on backdoor to support their military base and all that. There are others who feel, okay, there's a need to go to the negotiation table. The ECOWAS using its influence to see how that can be done. What's your take?
Well, I will rule out any military intervention at this point, because so far we've seen it did not even work when they tried that, threatening when the Niger coup happened. So I think it's a time for bodies, international, global bodies, regional bodies, to begin to understand that it is not always that route. I'll use the example of a father to a child. You know, when you beat a child often, it gets to the point the child grows and becomes used to that beating and can even withstand the father in terms of strength. And when some parents go that route over time, that's when you get cases of a father or a child fighting the parent, because that child can match your strength. So in this case, it's an issue of peace. What do we want for Africa? It is development and not destruction, because any military force will have a retaliation, and that will in turn result into destruction. So what we want is development. So negotiation should be the order of the day and not the use of force. But thankfully, our guest is back. He'll stay here. I'm talking about Jide Ologun, who is a legal practitioner and also a global affairs analyst, to respond to this. Now, in the event that ECOWAS, after negotiation, fails to restore those countries back to the body, what happens to ECOWAS as a body, and what signal would it send to the rest of the West African region? Please unmute your mic so we can hear you.
In the course of events that
Okay,
redefine the vision. And let me say this, at a time we're under the colonial masters, at a time we opted out, we didn't get it easily. And that changed the narrative. And I think we are at the threshold of that now, as these three nations are saying, okay, we are tired of ECOWAS because we are not seeing your positive impact. And the message for ECOWAS is now to re-strategize and become more relevant. Go back to the vision and the mission of ECOWAS when it was established in 1975 and again revised, and see where they have gone astray. And I can help ECOWAS by talking about national development. What is national development? The improvement of a country in all areas, including the political, the economic, social, scientific, material, and cultural spheres. And nations are evaluated based on the capacity to enhance its citizens' standards of living, which is a critical indicator in national development. Why are your citizens running to other countries? That will help you. And there are about 8 phases, about 5, expanding industries. Can we even claim to be an industrial hub? That's a big question. Investing in your education, how you develop your social cohesion, how you promote your culture and the values, how you turn your agrarian agricultural ventures to agroeconomy. You see, how you manage your religious institutions to ensure that they add values that are globally relevant. All right. And basically, you must do the political, the scientific, the cultural, the economic, the material, and the social, because these are critical to the fabric. So putting ECOWAS on the table now, they need to do what is called SWOT analysis. That how well have we done? What are our strengths, values? What about the weaknesses that we have demonstrated? What are the opportunities for us? And what are the threats? Recently, the Vice President of Nigeria was in Switzerland for an economic conference, and he said he was there to market the potentials of Nigeria. And I quite agree with that. But you see, you may need to do less marketing if your environment is business friendly. So it may be better that he returns home to sit down at the Federal Executive Council and they take a decision and be determined to return this nation to a secured environment season that will now give the foreign investors the confidence to come and invest in the country and ensure that the investors that are here do not jet out, that they provide the basic amenities that are expected to drive industrialization. These are issues. Your business environment, your social environment. And so for me, it's a redefining moment for ECOWAS. And of course, in the business environment, you have a unit called, or whether a department, as the case may be, business development unit. All they do is to push and expand the frontiers of productivity and how to engage the market share maximally. And I think we need that. And permit me to echo what I mentioned earlier, that ECOWAS is about economy, it's about political well-being of the sub-region. So how well have they performed? So and these are issues that should be of concern to them now. So whether they are negotiating or whatever they are doing, they should look at the bigger picture. What values have we delivered? What values could we have delivered? What does the future hold for us? How can we be relevant in the future? I mentioned Singapore earlier. Singapore left Malaysia in 1965. Between the space of 1965 to where we are today, through pragmatic and front-line leadership, transformational leadership, that country has been able to come out of the blues to prominence. So the same thing is available. And it should even be better when you have the regional bloc like ECOWAS. That means it's like they say in the scripture that iron sharpens iron. You can leverage on the comparative advantages you have and collaborate to develop your different nations and have a strong bloc. But as it is now, I cannot speak on how strong that bloc is, evaluating it by the impact on the people. I said earlier, if you have really impacted your citizens, they should come out to resist military intervention, actually.
Let's wrap up with this conversation. I'm happy with the fact that you're a legal practitioner, but let's look at the legal angle to this. If these countries, they've decided to exit ECOWAS, are they breaching any law? And then what options are available to ECOWAS? Maybe legal options or alternative are available to ECOWAS in exploring, the provisions of the law in order to resolve this kind of crisis?
Basically, and globally now, military intervention is not permitted. But whether you can legislate, whether you can adjudicate on that in court is a different ballgame. And if that is a possibility, which courts are these people even ready to respect the decision of any court? Or will you now say it's only when the previous authority returns to office that they can now say they want to charge them for either mutiny or for treason or whatever? But these guys are in charge now. They are in charge. We've had instances in 1983, if my history instructs me well, it should be 31st of December, 1983. In Nigeria here, the Second Republic was kicked aside by the Boots, and that was when the immediate past president of Nigeria, Muhammadu Buhari, came in as the military head of state. You see, and you saw that was any action taken. At the end of the day, he came back to become the civilian president in the country. So these are issues. Even if the laws are there, do we implement the laws? But I'm bringing a great solution here now. Can we return to good governance in West Africa? Can we return to good governance, please? Sweden is not talking about coup. Netherlands is not talking about coup. You know what I mean? Switzerland is not talking about coup. Australia is not talking about coup. But we know that different countries have their different challenges. But some of those challenges are enviable challenges, challenges that are brought about by development and not by poverty. And I maintain my position that of West Africa is poverty driven, and it's quite nauseating. I mean, I'm seeking for an adjective to use. It's an aspersion on leadership in West Africa, and I say that with all due respect. If today we still go for medical tourism out of West Africa to other countries, even those who came to colonize us, I doubt if we have succeeded so much in developing the region. You see, we are so, consumption eccentric. We import. Like I said earlier.
Ologun Esquire for being with us on Early Exchange today. Wish we had more time to look at this. Even the military leaders of this countries, how much of development and satisfaction can they bring to the people? But that will be a conversation for another time. Thank you for being on Early Exchange again.
Thank you. God bless Nigeria. God bless West Africa.
All right, that's been the show today. Thank you for your time with us. We ask that you join again tomorrow, 8 a.m. West African time. Now, if you missed the show, perhaps you just joined now, you can get to the beginning when you go to a channel on YouTube, watch again. But the conversation doesn't end on this table. You can always share your thoughts, leave a message at the comment section, or you go to any of our social media platform on Facebook or on Instagram at Souq News, and we'll appreciate your contribution. I am Blessing Age. There's so many wonderful programs to make your day on Early Exchange. Market Insight comes up at 11. There will be sports at noon, and then Souq Pulse comes up at 4 o'clock. So many of the programs. So just ensure that you live locked on Souq News so you can be updated on current happenings and get the information you need to make the smart move for your business and even for your personal life. Femi?
Yes, and from me to you, maximize today because there's no particular day called tomorrow. Don't forget, Early Exchange returns tomorrow. I am Femi Ayodele. Bye for now.